was a report that was published earlier today that has the internet going crazy right now. It's about the Switch 2 when it comes to third-party sales during its launch week and how it's not necessarily living up to the expectations of some of these third-party publishers. And right now, everyone's going back and forth trying to hone in on exactly what's causing this. And I wanted to go over that here today and give you guys what I think is the most responsible thing for this happening, because I do think it's kind of a combination of stuff, but one part in particular I think does stick out to me. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. So the leading issue is, apparently according to a lot of people, game key cards. Do I think they have an effect on what we're discussing here, which are these third-party sales? Yes, but I think that's just part of the entire formula here, okay? So stick with me for a moment as we kind of break that down. Let's take a look, though. This is over on gamebusiness.com. I'll have this link down below in the description if you want to read through it for yourself. And there's a lot that they go over here with what they think it could be, but we could see by the numbers that they mentioned, 62% of Switch 2 physical game sales in the US for launch week were from first-party games. That's excluding Mario Kart World Bundle, this coming from Circana. 48% of Switch 2 physical game sales in the UK launch week were from first-party games, excluding the Mario Kart World Bundle. That's from Nielsen IQ. But then, when you start including the Mario Kart World Bundle, as they mentioned here in the UK, 86% of Switch 2 physical game sales in the UK were from first-party games. That's including that bundle. So when you add up the Zelda games that were sold separate from the bundle, or just Mario Kart World in general, because consider this, there are naturally people who weren't able to get the bundle. Like when I went to Best Buy to pick mine up, they had so many with the bundle and so many without Mario Kart World. And I'm sure there are people who didn't get Mario Kart World with their system and just bought it separately physical, even for $80, because that's all that was there. Or maybe they just wanted a physical cartridge because that does have the game completely on that cartridge. So it's, for some people, yes, I know it's like, oh, it's $80, but there is that sense of, okay, I actually have the game. So I understand that perspective there. But in this case, 86% of physical game sales in the UK with the bundle included. Again, there are other people who didn't have the bundle and just probably bought it separate from that. So the attach rate basically for Mario Kart World is incredible. It's basically, if you bought a Switch 2, you probably bought Mario Kart World in some fashion in the bundle or just separate from it. So I don't think that's shocking anyone right now when I say that there. They do say, but by comparison, for the launch of Switch 1, 89% of UK physical game sales were from first-party games. Now, if you go back to the Switch 1, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was a crazy outlier situation, because at one point we got word that the attach rate for Breath of the Wild was more than 100%. People were buying The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild if they saw it at retail just to make sure they had it, because it was selling out. But in the off chance they find a Switch 1 at some point during that week or even later on, they have that generational release. It was a big deal at that time. So even hearing this, believe it or not, I look at that and I go, that feels kind of low. I mean, there's also 1-2 Switch, sure, but I don't know. Breath of the Wild was going crazy, right, in general there, with the even the US sales, again, being mentioned. Now, they do say that CD Projekt Cyberpunk 2077 was the best-selling third-party game during the launch of the Switch 2, beating launch sales of CD Projekt's Witcher 3 on the Switch 1, according to Nielsen. So, in terms of how CD Projekt is viewing this, I have to figure they're pretty happy. I don't think they're the publisher that's being quoted here, which we'll get to in a moment. Sega was the number 3 biggest publisher on the Switch 2 at launch, that from Circana. And when it comes to games released both physically and digitally, over 80% of Switch 2 games sales came from physical retailers. That, to me, is not shocking. Now, this data shared by publishers. So, again, talking with a lot of third parties, when you go to get the system on launch week, launch night, I mean, you're presented with a bunch of options in front of you, and most likely you're just going to go ahead and pick up what you have there all at once, get it out of the way, and then head home. Especially if you want to play it at midnight, although get the game key card, you're going to be sitting for a little bit downloading the stuff. But either way, the point is you go into the store and you're already in that buying mentality. So you're kind of just stacking stuff at that point through checkout, especially with how a lot of them were very much, I mean, they were very operational in the way they did it. At times they're walking around with a little piece of paper like at Best Buy, and they're almost taking your order like you're at a restaurant. What do you want? Okay, we'll mark all this stuff off, hand this to them when you get up there, and they'll get it all done quickly. Now, they do go on to say, what do the numbers mean exactly here? So they say it's hard to describe these statistics as positive, despite, look, third-party publishers appear to have done slightly better during the launch of the Switch 2 compared to the Switch 1. And yes, because there are many more games at launch for Switch 2 versus Switch 1. People forget the Switch 1 lineup when it came out. So there's Switch 2, right? There's just some of the games that we had offered during launch. I think this is actually all of them. But then you look at the Switch 1, and yeah, there's a couple retail games up here. There's ones. The eShop, by the way, was barren in 2017 when it came out. Otherwise, though, 1-2 Switch, Just Dance 2017, Breath of the Wild, Skylanders, and Super Bomberman R. Super Bomberman R, from what I remember, was the most successful third-party game at launch, and you can kind of see why. I don't know if people were falling over themselves for something like Skylanders, but there you go. Breath of the Wild, it makes sense why it had the attach rate that it did, because, I mean, you walk up to the counter, it's like 1-2 Switch or Breath of the Wild. It's a tough choice right there. Anyway, they do have a mention here saying most third-party Switch 2 games posted very low numbers. One third-party publisher characterized the numbers as below our lowest estimates despite strong hardware sales. So the idea here is we are measuring them with expectations, which should be higher now for the Switch 2 versus the Switch 1. Switch 1 coming off of the Wii U generation, Switch 2 coming off the Switch 1 generation. So yes, a lot of these third parties, I'm sure we're thinking, if we just show up, we'll just get money. And I mean, in a way that I'm sure they sold some of these games, right? It's not, CD Projekt's probably very happy, I assume, with Cyberpunk and what they were able to do here at launch, as that is a game that I figure will just keep selling on the Switch 2 as we go along. But they do go over several reasons as to why they think this could be, okay? And for the most part, it's a lot of things that have been kind of brought up online, just sort of thrown together here and summarized, with things even like, Nintendo didn't send out Switch 2 units to media ahead of release. And look, that is a legitimate thing that would affect third-party games. In fact, that's basically what we brought up before when this was all going down and that news broke. It's like, yeah, like Mario Kart's going to sell, but third-party games kind of need those reviews to tell you if it's a good port or not, specifically for launch night. And people are going to go in there and they have to make almost split-second decisions as like, okay, what am I grabbing for this, like this new system I just got? Do I want to spend $50 or $60 here or hold on to it and just see how the ports are when other people get a chance to play it? So that to me that is a big thing there, right? They also mentioned backwards compatibility as a drawback, which is, for me, it's funny to think about it that way because it's awesome. Backwards compatibility is great for the system from my perspective, since I'm using it to even play the DLC for Scarlet and Violet, which they point out right here. But if you're a third party publisher, you're kind of annoyed that people can go home and just even put games that they've already bought from you into their Switch 2 and just start playing them without having to buy them again. I'm sure that's not an exciting prospect for them. But at the same time, you kind of should take more advantage of that when Sega, for example, has sold Sonic Cross Shadows Generations. It's like, sell an upgrade path for that for $10. People already have it. They go home. They can give you $10 to get the better version of it. Instead, if you show up and ask for another $50 just outright, people are probably going to go, I'll wait for it to go on sale. I already kind of have it on the Switch 1 and I already checked it out. I can wait for when it's maybe $20 or something during Cyber Monday or Black Friday later in the year. Which that also brings us back to the idea that a lot of these ports, as they mentioned, are just older. So Yakuza 0 is an awesome game. Like, I don't think anyone's going to dispute that, but it is a game that's been out for 10 years, 9 years. It's been a long time. This is the director's cut that does get additional content in the way of different cutscenes. I think it's like 25 minutes of just more story added to it, a dub, and there's a multiplayer mode. But if you're somebody who has already experienced that game, you might say, I'm going to hold my money for the next big experience like Donkey Kong that's out next month. Or maybe you're someone that's like, I will just go ahead and buy either NSO to get the upgrades for those Zelda games, or just buy those upgrades outright. That's the thing. When you go up to the counter and you see how a lot of these older ports are $50 or $60, it's not exactly something that's as compelling to start picking up compared to Cyberpunk, which I know the comparable right now, the comparison is that's a game key card. Cyberpunk is not. It's all in the cartridge. And I will say this with game key cards. There is definitely a stigma to them, and it does affect some people's buying habits at this point with the Switch 2. So I think it's impossible to say that absolutely has no effect on any of this, as people who are going out to midnight releases are very clearly more so in the know than people who are going to pick this thing up during the holidays for Christmas or something for their kids. And there's like, whatever, just give me what's popular, Switch 2, and then, I don't know, grab a couple of games here or there. No, people who are going to these midnight releases and even standing outside of the store for the entire day probably know what a game key card is and have decided if they are okay with buying it or not. And just, you can look at the public perception online. While I think that is a smaller slice of the pie than people think right now, there's still people out there, I'm sure, that are just passing on some of these third-party games because almost every one of them decided to go the game key card route. Now, does that fall on them? Does that fall on Nintendo? There's still a lot of argument back and forth on that because I think Nintendo needs to figure out a situation where they can get these cartridge costs lower so we can see them start to show up just on the cartridge themselves. I mean, Cyberpunk played to that perfectly, with CD Projekt having that as one of the big marketing pieces. Hey, it's on a 64 gigabyte cartridge. It was right there in the card that they had up on sites like Walmart or Target. It just said 64 gigabyte cartridge here with the whole game on it. It's like, phew, that's really where we are right now with the marketing aspect to this. And while Cyberpunk 2077 is an older title, I think just the way it's been marketed and sort of pitched here as the technological showcase for this system, while also having Phantom Liberty packed in, which if you look at other platforms, it's right around that price. I think there were a number of things coming together to really hold up Cyberpunk 2077 as actually a very good third-party release at launch for the system. I will give you what I believe is I think the most responsible part of this. And that comes down to the fact that people went out to the store, they bought a Switch 2 to play Mario Kart World. I know it sounds very basic, but this is the most expensive system Nintendo's released. Okay? So now think about it this way. You buy Mario Kart World, the bundle on the Switch 2, $500, but you need another controller. It's like, those Joy-Cons I have at home are kind of drifting a little bit. I'll get a Pro controller then. I kind of want the camera because that's supposed to work out to where your face will be above your cart when you drive it around. Now you're at $640. It stacks up very quickly, and all of a sudden you're like, ooh, do I even have enough money to get any other games, or can I live with Mario Kart? I really think that's what happened here. The accessories, I'm sure, were selling well enough, but it wouldn't shock me if just that overall price point that people walked into the store buying the Switch 2, if they didn't get Mario Kart World in the bundle, it's $530. I think at that point, it's like, these older ports of games, do I throw another $50 or $60 at it with the limited funds that I even have to get this? I'll wait for a sale. And that's it. Nintendo games, we know, don't typically go on sale, so there's more of a drive to buy them at launch because it's like, what are they going to get cheaper? Huh. That's funny. So that's kind of where I think it is, and I think it's as upfront as just that. I know the game keycard thing gets pushed a lot, and I don't think there's enough data yet. I think there's a lot of pushback online, and I'm also someone who's like, if it's a game keycard, I'll probably just buy it digitally. And that's kind of where I am with this, is I want to see game keycards released for a game that is specific to the Switch 2, so it's like a third-party exclusive title, and it's one that is extremely compelling. So one example is FromSoft's game next year. I'm trying to figure out if that's going to be in the cartridge or game key, and it wouldn't shock me if it's just a game key card, because that's what Elden Ring is. If that's the case, how will that do physical versus digital? How many people will go out and say, you know what, I'm just going to get the game key card because I want the casing or whatever there? Because then you really don't have much of a choice. It's either I don't get the new FromSoft game, and there are plenty of people who that's just out of the question for them. They need to get the new FromSoft game. To me, that's going to be the big measuring stick for game keycards, not just zero sales. It's like how many people opt for that versus just digitally buying the game outright. Oh, and real quick, I wanted to point out that Matt Piscatella did weigh in here saying third-party share of Switch 2 software in the US is far better than it was during the Switch 1 launch. Third-party unit share of Switch 2 physical software during week 1 reached just shy of 40%. For month 1 of the Switch launch, it was less than 20%. Again, that kind of makes sense to me considering there really wasn't much for the Switch 1 when it comes to third-party games versus first-party. I mean, Breath of the Wild just completely dominated launch sales in general, whereas now there are legitimately a bunch of different choices outside of Bomberman R and Skylanders. While, I mean, it's a statistic here that at least backs up that, okay, there were more third-party sales than necessarily are being conveyed now with the latest report. I still don't think it necessarily plays in favor of third parties, especially with what could be higher expectations. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. Feel free to let me know what you think the biggest reason for when it comes to some of the numbers that we see here with the first party versus third party split, and how some of these third party publishers aren't necessarily happy about it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.